As the specter of Aaron Rodgers looms over the Pittsburgh Steelers franchise, any conversation over the current QB1 on the actual roster, Mason Rudolph, has been almost non-existent. Maybe you didn't even know that was the case before clicking on this video. Maybe you didn't recognize him in the thumbnail because now he has a mustache. But while his new facial hair symbolizes a man who has grown wiser with age, this is still the same Mason Rudolph that was bashed across the side of the head with a helmet by Myles Garrett during his first stint in Pittsburgh.
That was like 8 years ago, asshole.
I'm sure Mason would prefer to be recognized for a different moment in his career, but to be a guy with a thing is in itself an accomplishment and should make him all the more easier to write or talk about. And yet, crickets. Maybe that shows that insiders know a deal between Rodgers and the Steelers is all but actually signed. After passing little "do you like me" notes through the media to Kevin O'Connell in Minnesota and getting the "yes, as a friend" response, he's turned his attention to Pittsburgh where the interest appears realer and mutualer. Steelers owner Art Rooney has been non-committal but always positive about the two parties getting closer and closer to a deal, and it wasn't by happenstance that Rodgers and DK Metcalf linked up to work out together this spring. Much of the fan base, including Terry Bradshaw, however, have been far less positive about the idea of signing Rodgers to the roster.
That is just, to me, is a joke. What are you going to bring him in for 1 year? Are you kidding me? I mean,
that's not the Steelers' way, right?
No, man, that guy needs to stay in California and go, somewhere and chew on bark.
The reason for this is twofold, one more general and the other Steelers specific. First, if you don't already have Aaron Rodgers fatigue, you're either Aaron Rodgers or you write for The Athletic. He's clearly still a good quarterback, but nowhere near the same elite guy he was before going to New York. Nobody needs a million stories about him rehashing all the same shit. I'm sure he'd have some surly meta critique saying that it's actually people like me's fault that he gets written about so much or whatever, but that's fine, it's my fault, who cares, just make it stop. And second, in Pittsburgh, there's a feeling that the team has lived the same season since 2018. An above 500 group built on defense and a shaky offense that fights its way into the postseason, only to be bounced in the first game. It's not crazy to believe the Steelers are trapped on the treadmill of mediocrity. After hanging on to Big Ben for 3 years too long, they've cycled through 6 quarterbacks since 2021 to varying levels of success, but similar levels of disappointment. They're really much closer to the Indianapolis Colts situation post-Andrew Luck than they've often gotten credit for. And while there is merit in making the playoffs in 4 of the 7 years since 2018, this is a city that's experienced the highs of a Super Bowl win in 2008 and a return in 2010. Getting a flawless preseason performance out of Kenny Pickett or a hopeless loss to the division rival Ravens in the wild card with Russell Wilson at the helm just doesn't hit the same. So, it's no wonder that many fans would rather forego the chance at another 9 or 10 win season with Aaron Rodgers and embrace a worse one with Rudolph. The Steelers, after all, will have 12 draft picks and the 4th most cap space next offseason as it stands today. But how much worse of a season would Rudolph give the Steelers? I've seen comments online saying things like, I'd rather lose 2 more games with Rudolph than win those with Rodgers, and, well, I actually don't think that's right. Let's get into what Rudolph actually looks like on the field, and what we might be able to expect from a season if he did actually end up as QB1 in Pittsburgh. Because we all knew to ignore Tennessee by week 5 or so last year, I think most people remember Rudolph's previous stint with the Steelers more than they think back to his 8 games as a Titan. Back in 2023, Rudolph was called upon late to save a season that was quickly slipping away from Pittsburgh. Kenny Pickett wasn't the answer, and Mitchell Trubisky was working with the Witness Protection Program to evade the Yinzer's rage. Mason put together a 3-game winning streak to end the season, where he passed for a total of 719 yards with a 74.3% completion rate, 3 touchdowns, and no picks. The year ended in a wildcard defeat like they so often do now, this time to the Buffalo Bills. But anyone who's seen a few quarterback stat lines in their day would see Rudolph's and assume efficient and accurate passer who takes what's given and gets the ball out on time. And there are absolutely moments of this. Take this dig route he throws to Calvin Ridley against the Colts in week 16. At the snap, the Indy defense takes the shape of a cover 3. Because the corner on Ridley's side is tasked with guarding this whole third of the field, he'll keep Ridley in front of him, which means giving up a cushion and funneling him to the middle safety. The outside linebacker gets sucked in and tries to watch Rudolph's eyes without knowing what's going on behind him. Mason then rips a great ball into space to pick up 19. But I spotted some major flaws in his game that I think would be exploited, especially if he were to start for an entire season. From what I saw, I think it all stems from either an overconfidence in what he's seeing pre-snap or an underdeveloped ability to read defenses post-snap. Either way, it causes him to stare down guys, get tricked by disguised coverages, and occasionally throw some real ducks. Not to be confused with 2019 Steelers starter Devlin Hodges.
All right, Hodges looking deep again. Washington's open. Washington has it.
Here's one of his interceptions against Buffalo in Week 7. Let's focus on what's happening on the right side of the field. The Titans have slants called, and Rudolph wants to go to his ex-receiver on the end. He can assume the Bills will be playing man coverage because they're pressing, and it's third down with only 4 yards to go. Basically, he'll just want to confirm the man coverage when the slot receiver takes his defender away from the space he wants to throw into. At the snap, if we're laser focused on these defensive keys, we'll see Rudolph gets exactly what he wants. The only issue is the safety on the same side, which was showing cover 2, sinks inside and gets right into where that opening should be. You can see Mason even hesitate for a second, but then still force it in there. The result is a throw into double coverage and an interception. It's in the defense's best interest to play lots of zone against Rudolph so they can watch his eyes and force him into mistakes. Here's another pick, this one in Indianapolis, where the coverage takes advantage of him staring down his guy. Again, we'll focus on the right side of the play. Rudolph wants to get it to Tyler Boyd here on an out route. With the linebacker cheated more inside, it seems like this route will open up, especially with Ridley's route drifting further outside to create more space. Only the defender matched up on Ridley keeps his eyes on Rudolph. When Rudolph sees the space open up between Boyd and the linebacker, he releases this one, but completely ignores Ridley's guy who steps right in front of it for an easy pick. And this bad habit of staring down his receivers does more than just lead to mistakes. It can also leave explosive plays on the field. Here's an example against the Patriots where he just doesn't appear to be reading what the safety is doing. New England comes out with a single high coverage, the Titans have 3 different routes streaking deep. At the snap, watch the safety bail out to the right side of the field to help with the 2 receivers on that side, leaving the other side completely open for a deep ball to Ridley. Rudolph makes a decent decision here to take the easy pass underneath, but this was the first moment I realized that he likely wasn't reading the safeties consistently and leaving yards out there. It just takes him longer to move across his reads. Sometimes he appears almost frozen on where he was planning to go with the ball, only to make a different decision at the last second, not get his feet under him, and watch the ball soar. Now, it is fair to bring up the fact Tennessee had one of the worst offensive lines in football, grading 31st in run blocking and 24th in pass blocking via PFF. So maybe Rudolph just stopped trusting them and got into survival mode, but even in 2023 with Pittsburgh, he was still staring guys down and making these same mistakes. Unless he shows some major development over this offseason, I'm going to assume this is who he is. And if that's the case, I think Rudolph would account for less than just 2 fewer wins compared to what a Rodgers-led team would. I believe the Steelers are closer to a 5-6 win team with Rudolph than a 9 or 10 win one like they might be with Rodgers. And while yes, it's nice to get a shot to get into the postseason, does anyone really think Pittsburgh is anything other than a faux contender? Just an excuse for us to get yet another Rodgers storyline on some Thursday night game later in the season. And look, there's a chance that the Steelers aren't even that 9-win team we're assuming they'd be with Rodgers. Their fantastic defense finally started showing some cracks towards the end of the year last year, where breakdowns became a regularity and fingers started getting pointed. TJ Watt is in his 30s now, Cam Hayward will be 37, and they lost Dante Jackson, their interceptions leader, and replaced him with a 34-year-old Darius Slay. The offense should have a better line than they did in years past, but they'll still have a suspect receiver room headlined by DK Metcalf, and we'll have to see how well Jaylen Warren does in the absence of Najee Harris. All I'm saying is a single season from hell really that bad? Let's say the defense has lost a step and Mason Rudolph sucks. Pittsburgh could find reps for rookie Will Howard to see what they've got in him later in the year. They could gauge where the defense is at and maybe shut down a guy like Hayward early if it looks bad to preserve him for one more year. And then we'll have a nice on-ramp to prepare for the draft and what to do with their cap space. Of course, One bad year has a tendency to turn into several, and then suddenly you've got a full rebuild on your hands. But I also think Pittsburgh is in a situation where it may make sense to take a gamble with an off year to retool. It's hard to feel like this team will do anything other than disappoint until they finally take a different path and rip the proverbial band-aid off. For what it's worth, the difference between a 5-win season and a 9-win one could be the difference between the 6th and 17th picks in the draft. If you wanted me to predict the future, I do think the Aaron Rodgers partnership will eventually become official. For all the shit I've talked about him, I think he still gives you a chance to win a Super Bowl if you get to the postseason, even if that chance is smaller than it's ever been before. With Rudolph, there is no chance. And I think if you have an opportunity to compete and feel your team is playoff bound, I think it's difficult to look away from what Rodgers could do for you, especially if it's just a one-year deal. But I don't think I'm alone in just simply not wanting that to happen. I know it doesn't make complete football sense, but I'm just over Aaron Rodgers at this point. Maybe the Steelers will drink some ayahuasca and come to that same realization, and if they do end up wanting to sacrifice this year for a potentially greater good, Rudolph would make a great lamb for the slaughter. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please remember to give it a like if you did enjoy it, and consider subscribing to the channel so you can catch the next one. Thanks, bye.